So KSI has made some stupid and embarrassing decisions in boxing recently, and has even shown to be a massive hypocrite. To start this entire story, we have to go to the beginning, which is Anthony Taylor versus Darren Till in its boxing match. At this boxing match, KSI, in between one of the matches, promotes in a very cringe WWE inspired way that he was boxing Wayne Bridge, a retired 44-year-old soccer player. Whenever he announced this in the ring, it was actually so quiet, and even quiet during the face-off and the fake beef and talking back and forth, it was actually embarrassing. Even people on Twitter were just like, what? To go on, KSI ended up saying some stuff about a past relationship of his in the ring during this painful promotion, and due to what he said, this caused Wayne Bridge to pull out of the fight, saying this on his Instagram story. I'm sure a lot of you have seen what happened on Saturday night at the Misfits boxing event. Firstly, I think it's important that I explain my reasoning for accepting the fight. I always like to challenge myself. This felt like a good opportunity to go up against an interesting opponent on a big stage. I've always loved boxing as a part of my everyday training routine. I was fully prepared to train hard and have some fun. Of course, I expected to face some criticism. I feel like what was said on Saturday crossed a line. These are deeply personal comments that affect mine and others' families involved in the situation. I'm a family man first, and my priority is protecting them. My opponent is someone that many children look up to around the world, including my kids. I hope one day he will look back on this differently. I personally don't want to be involved in these exchanges. I'll no longer be fighting on the 29th of March. I'm still looking out for my next big challenge and have some exciting things coming up in 2025. Thanks for all the love and the support. Has been overwhelming. I want my friends and family to know how special they are. Deep down, I know this is the right thing to do. Apparently, there's like an affair of some sort that might have or might have not happened. I don't really know. There's some people saying that the people that originally came out with this apologized later for being misinformation. And to be honest, Wayne Bridge is kind of fair for this, I'm not gonna lie. I would do the same. The dude is retired, surely has plenty of money, and wanted to do this for fun and not deal with any of the other antics that came with it, which is kind of understandable in a sense, because he isn't like one of these people. He's literally just coming here to fight. Like, he wants to go and fight someone. He doesn't want to deal with all the trash talk and all, especially something deep and personal that affects people that are not just him. Darren Till on Twitter said he was ready to fight KSI in March, where the Wayne fight was originally scheduled, but KSI ended up getting a possible match with Dillon Danis instead. Dillon Danis is an MMA fighter signed with the GFL and has a 2-0 record after fighting in Bellator. He is 31 and has had a boxing match against Logan Paul, but he was mainly only there to troll, make money, and get Logan Paul into a submission, but he ends up slipping out of that submission because of how sweaty Logan Paul was. Although people criticized Dillon Danis a lot for this fight, I think his intentions were clear from the very beginning. And this fight actually says a lot more about Logan Paul than it does Dillon Danis, as Logan Paul didn't even put this dude down or do much of anything besides just outstrike him. There was no wobbling or anything during this from what I remember. Dillon Danis is also in a lawsuit with Logan Paul and his wife or girlfriend, whatever she is, over tweets that he made. Over legit tweets. Dillon Danis made a bunch of troll tweets exposing Logan Paul's girlfriend for being a whore by tweeting a bunch of pictures of her with a bunch, and I mean a bunch, of different men. There was like a new tweet every day or every few hours that Dillon Danis would post. It was Logan Paul's girl with a different man every single time. These tweets were going insanely viral, but somehow the girl and Logan make themselves look like the victim in the situation. It's actually insane. Let's think about the Crypto Zoo victims first, buddy. But I didn't get much info from the boxing fight, and his MMA fights so far were against not great competition, but they were also his first 2 MMA fights. He went against people who had knockouts and first-round finishes, as well as both those people had more experience in MMA than he did. So he was just doing these starter things. I mean, he wasn't supposed to go against, like, a champion yet or anything. But after watching these 2 fights, I can see that in the first fight, he was focused on submissions and wasn't well experienced on the feet, and that was even said by apparently his coach and stuff like that, as I heard in the commentary. And then in his second fight back, he struck on the feet a little bit. He ended up getting a takedown, about TKO'd the dude that he was fighting, and then ended up getting a submission later in the first round with some nice strikes in the midst of attempting to get submissions. It was pretty nice, I'm not gonna lie. He was supposed to fight again but got injured, then got let go from Bellator later, I think in 2023, and I think it was mainly due to Bellator about to close down. These fights were also years ago now, and I would definitely like to see him in MMA more. Dillon Danis was actually supposed to fight in Misfits' first ever MMA card, which still hasn't happened yet for whatever reason, I'm not sure. But he's also been trying to get into the UFC. He's made multiple attempts to, and he's also tweeting a lot about how he always wants to fight. He's like, man, I really want to fight in MMA. I want to fight in MMA so bad, and stuff like that, which is kind of respectable. Dana White, the owner and the person over the UFC, whenever asked about Dillon Danis, said, wherever Dillon Danis is, there is usually trouble. And that is really about it. He seemed pretty neutral about Dillon Danis. Didn't really have hard or good things to say about him. Just mainly that, hey, this dude like causes a lot of drama. That's about it. But Dillon Danis is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu expert. He trained and coached Conor McGregor and has won various tournaments and championships in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he trains with some of the best fighters in the world, like Alex Pereira, who is the light heavyweight champion in the UFC, as well as others, and trains in those like really, up there gyms. But to come to the present, KSI makes a video on his second channel, which is titled Laughing at Jake Paul v3. It's kind of weird to me that KSI makes videos on Jake Paul still, despite not making a fight with him yet and dragging it on and still making videos on him. Like, I kind of get it. You want to still have that beef with him and make a fight at some point maybe. But to me, it's just kind of tiring, and to everyone else, it's very tiring, because it's literally just two dogs barking at each other, but they're not moving at all. It's like two dogs on each side of the fence, but none of them will actually jump over the fence. In this video, he talks about his scheduled fight against Dillon Danis on March 29th, as well as talks and boasts about fighters who rejected to fight him, or rejected the fight offer. But the 4 people that he lists are, I'll show you the clips first.
We love you, but my God, your opponents since your return to boxing have been bad. This guy has been your only real test. None of us want to see Dillon Danis again. We don't even want to see him get knocked out. He's just so irrelevant. I'm not really fighting him for you lot. I'm fighting for me. I need to get my get back. I'm sorry. Like, him and everything he stands for. Yes, Logan Paul, beat him, but I want to pulverize him. I want to obliterate him. I want him on the floor, unconscious. Also, you guys always say that my opponents have been terrible, but how many people pull out? I don't think you understand how many people pull out of fighting me. The first fight back, it was meant to be against Alex Wasabi, and he pulled out. I was put to fight a pro boxer, and then he turned out to be a white supremacist. Keep in mind, we had 2 weeks till the fight. So when they're scrambling, and then we were like, screw it, we'll do 2 versus 1 just to make it an event. And that's why I fought Swarms and Pineda. And then I was meant to fight Dillon Danis. Guess what? He pulled out, and then I had to face Temper. I was saying, like, it's my fault. People pull out with me. Even with this fight, I know I'm not even allowed to say this, but bro, Dillon Danis wasn't even my 4th choice. We went to Nate Diaz. He said nah. We went to Donald Cerone. He said nah. We went to Tony Ferguson. He said nah. These guys said no to me. So I'm like, bro, do I have to go to a footballer to fight? And he said yes. So what? I'm there confused as to why a footballer wants to fight me, but these top UFC, ex-UFC fighters don't want to fight me. Even Masvidal, we went to Masvidal to fight. He can't do it because of UFC. Like, guys, we've been trying to find people to fight. And I know you guys are going to be like, oh, what about Darren Till? Darren Till probably isn't going to want to fight at my fight weight. And then if he does, he's not going to want to do the rehydration clause. Because brothers, huge compared to me. I walk around, what, 190, 195? Darren Till walks around 220. So I'm not going to just allow him to do what Tommy Fury did. Just, kill himself to get to a certain weight, go on the scale, and then balloon right back up to his natural weight. So guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It's Dillon Danis. And you know what? I'm fine with that. I'm happy to knock out Dillon Danis. I've been wanting to knock this guy out since Misfits 3. So yeah.
Why would you ever admit to this list at all? This is so hypocritical, as you and everyone else talk about Jake Paul fighting old and retired fighters, but you are trying to do the same. Also, boxing is so corny because Jake Paul isn't ducking anything, and KSI exposes himself in this video to have weird rules like a rehydration clause, where fighters have to make weight and then aren't allowed to use liquid IVs or other means to recover recover quicker. So KSI essentially is saying that he wants to fight anyone, but at their least possible best. And because KSI is a coward, you don't see him fight anyone, and this is one of the main reason that KSI versus Jake Paul has not happened yet. And it also shows that KSI is not willing to actually fight, and he's not willing to fight people at their best. And also, KSI doing the whole, this is just a side thing for me, bro. It's just for fun, is such a cope. He really did not take losing to Tommy Fury well at all, and would have never said this if he won against Tommy Fury. He would be attempting to fight Canelo and all these other big people right now if he beat Tommy Fury. I 100% know that. He would be saying boxing is his life and stuff, and I'm pretty sure he said stuff like that in the past, but now, after he lost, he's like, oh, it's just a side thing. Yeah, it's just a side thing. It's just corny. But now let's go into the 4 people KSI wants to fight. And to be clear, I'm a huge fan of MMA. I know these people very well, but even before, I'm just making sure my research was correct and stuff for the video. I'm a big MMA fan, so this means a lot to me. Let's start with Nate Diaz. A past prime Nate Diaz that's 39 years old, an MMA fighter who isn't signed anywhere but is in current talks of returning to the UFC. Like, there's been a lot of rumors of it. I think that's what he wants to do anyways, return back to the UFC. Jake Paul also already fought Nate Diaz, so this is just literally, again, more sloppy seconds of Jake Paul's. Next is Donald Cowboy Cerone, a retired 41-year-old MMA fighter who before retiring was on a 6-fight and 1 no contest losing streak. Is also coming back to the UFC right now to fight once or twice. I think he said mainly just for money fights. I think that's about it. So no, he can't fight KSI and shouldn't in the first place. He should stay retired. He shouldn't have even came back. Next is Tony Ferguson. If you know MMA, or if you know about the UFC and you know about Tony Ferguson, then you already understand how ridiculous this is. But if you do not know, Tony El Cucuy Ferguson was an amazing fighter who had a glorious 12-fight winning streak and was a legit threat and a scary person. But he ended up getting injured, he lost to a good title contender, and is getting older, and is now on a 8-fight losing streak in the UFC. He is also 40 years old and signed to the GFL, which is the Global Fight League. But during the possible time of negotiations or asking people if they wanted to fight, most likely Tony Ferguson would have still been in the UFC. Or even just be in the GFL, which I guess the GFL allows you to fight outside of them as well, like maybe a boxing match or something, because Dillon Danis is signed with the GFL and is doing this boxing match in March. The last fighter listed on here was Street Judas, aka Jorge Masvidal, a fighter that I don't look up highly upon, which if you watch MMA and you already know why I called him that, who is also 40 years old and on a 4-fight losing streak in MMA, and then also one recent loss to Nate Diaz in boxing. And also, he's still under a UFC contract, so can't fight him either. Valid one is possibly Jorge Masvidal, but even that's not even valid, and I don't want to see it. I would love to see Jorge Masvidal win this fight, and I think that he's probably in better condition than most of the other fighters. But there's no point of fighting Jorge Masvidal. Stop fighting older folk. If you don't know MMA or any sport in general, 40 years old is retirement age, or when everyone should be retired at. After turning 40, you get older in this sport and deal with a lot more damage to your brain and body, as well as just not perform as well. Slower reaction time and such kicks in. That comes with old age, and KSI has consistently tried to call out Jake Paul for fighting older opponents for these same reasons. But KSI then goes on to flex trying to fight 4 40-year-olds. The youngest one in that list is a 39-year-old Nate Diaz. Why would you want to fight these older guys anyway? Most of them are about done with the sport, incredibly inactive, old, or retired. This makes you look incredibly sad and as bad as Jake Paul. It's not that they are scared, they're just under contracts with the UFC or don't want to stoop as low as YouTuber boxing. Let these guys stay retired. Please let these fighters stay retired. Stop bringing these guys back. They need to stay retired. The GFL shouldn't even exist. If anything, fight Darren Till. He's 32. He just beat someone in your promotion that you were supposed to go against soon, and you'll be fighting at a higher weight. It is semi-valid competition that will help you get closer to being ready to fight Jake Paul like everyone else wants. Self-admittedly said you want to fight people in higher weights to get closer to fighting Jake Paul. And that was said at the Darren Till boxing event. Where is this KSI now? It's not even been that long since that fight card, and you're acting like, this is ridiculous. Because the end goal in YouTuber boxing is Jake Paul versus KSI. And it's so interesting to me as well, looking back, that Jake Paul's career seems to be going better, more consistent, and such like that, and just more successful compared to KSI's. Also, KSI doing all this just to lose to Jake Paul is like absolutely insane. 7 years of waiting on this, by the way. It has been 7 years since the original call out of the Paul brothers. Even though that you lost to Tommy, you should still fight decent competition. I have no idea why these weirdos always want to fight retired and old UFC fighters. It's such strange and sad behavior, and it's really annoying and corny. Fight actual active boxers your age. You aren't going to get any better or look good fighting 40-year-olds. KSI's video is also so full of ego as he reacts to some news about Jake Paul versus Canelo being cancelled and looking at Jake's tweets. And yes, Jake Paul versus Canelo was actually in talks, but here's the clip of KSI reacting to Jake Paul.
I'll be free after I KO Dillon Danis March 29th. So I didn't even know he'd tweet back at me. Doing the zone dirty like that is exactly why you are 7 years into boxing and fighting a has-been jiu-jitsu practitioner. You need me, I don't need you. Yet again, Jake Paul ducking. Bro, it's Jake Paul. It's Jake Paul that doesn't want to fight me, which is crazy. This is his career. Boxing is a part-time thing for me. Jake Paul is fully crashing out. He's just been tweeting constantly about Canelo. Whoa, whoa. You didn't get the Canelo fight? No.
This is the same dude who freaked out over Dan TDM criticizing Lunchley and even tried to call him out during a boxing event. Like, this dude was so stuck and so upset about what Dan TDM, a Minecraft YouTuber, said about Lunchley, which it was very valid criticism. And he's trying to act like, you know, Jake Paul's a psycho or Jake Paul's being like a baby. Also, where is proof that Jake Paul is ducking? And this tweet doesn't even say anything. You're actually reaching, and you are 31 years old. Please grow up, please. Comments of this video are actually pretty good, and they actually criticize him and don't get blocked like Ian's, which is my last video. RMSTRD was taken for some reason, says, bro is doing everything he laughed at Jake Paul for. Miguelito 29373 says, quote, Jake Paul only fights retired MMA fighters, KSI. KSI's first 4 choices. Freak Vonk 8586 says, you can clearly tell his Tommy Fury loss weighs so much on him. Man was gradually picking more and more difficult opponents, and now he's back to fighting bums just to uplift his damaged ego. Della.Chambers-VSDF says, the level of delusion when JJ talks about his boxing skills is impeccable. And that's the thing, is that a lot of these videos, it's another prime example of someone that people watch that I genuinely don't understand why they watch. Because KSI is just so egotistical, and I think most of his people are just like pyrocynical viewers. They literally just sit there and hate watch, because, like, the dude's insufferable. He is worse in ways than pyrocynical, because at least pyrocynical isn't completely egotistical. Like, all of his videos are him jerking himself off. It's just insane to me, and it's incredibly annoying, especially when half of this stuff is lies. You realize this guy is pushing 40 soon, and is just acting this way. He has ducked fighting Jake Paul for 7 years, and it's going to go on 8 to 10 before it actually happens. Twitter also tore into KSI over trying to fight these older people, especially trying to fight Tony Ferguson. Everyone in the MMA community wants to see Tony Ferguson either win or just retire. Like, everyone's been begging him to retire for a while now. If Jake Paul did any of these fights, we would be saying the same thing. Or if he even said that these were the 4 fights he wanted next, we'd be saying the same exact thing. And KSI would make another video on Jake Paul and, say everything that he has said a million times about him, and the same things we have all said in the past about Jake Paul. Talking about Jake Paul versus KSI earlier, and to go back to that, KSI was actually exposed for scamming his fans with a giveaway. KSI versus Jake Paul has had dates and such before, and about like estimates of whenever they were going to fight, but it has been canceled multiple times. And during one of these times that KSI was supposed to fight Jake Paul, KSI had some music rolling out, and also before that fight was supposed to fight Swarms and Pineda, which actually did end up happening. But the entire giveaway was based off if you bought his music. If you bought his music on iTunes, you would be put into a giveaway for tickets for both the fight that was coming up, as well as VIP tickets to KSI versus Jake Paul.
Yo, what's up? Alright, so I got a little competition. If you buy Not Over Yet right now on iTunes, then you'll be entered into a competition where you will have the chance to get 2 tickets to my fight against Swarms, as well as 2 VIP tickets to the Jake Paul fight next year at Wembley Stadium. So, without further ado, go buy Not Over Yet right now in a bit.
But KSI versus Jake Paul never ended up happening. It's pretty scummy, especially because in the end, Jake Paul versus KSI was never confirmed. And why do a giveaway for something like this that is never confirmed? And it's just pretty weird and scamish to me. I mean, he does hang out with IShowScams and Logan Paul, so I guess he learned from them. But that is the end of the video. Let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. If I was KSI, I would fight actual competition, whether a YouTuber or a boxer, and do whatever to get the Jake Paul fight and cut off all this ego nonsense. Unk really does need to start acting right. I hope he keeps losing. His entire life is an L. At this point, he surrounds himself with bad people. He will probably lose his next fight due to ring rust. If he actually fights Dillon, we'll have to see how good his striking is that day. I'm going to guess last round submission by Dillon Danis again, or maybe first round submission by Dillon Danis, just to quickly get out of there. But pushing 40 and acting like this is such weird and embarrassing behavior. But to end this off, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, as I make videos like these about internet dramas and internet weirdos. Thank you all for the support, and in the end, I'm PERK30, and keep God close.